bus that picks us up and takes us to the studio. So
Awesome.
yeah, it's
So
about an hour journey.
fantastic. We are starting our broadcast here. So hello and welcome to Who's the Bossk? It's a Star Wars podcast from laughingplace.com. My name is Mike Celestino. I'm your host. I am the lead Southern California reporter and editorial director for Star Wars content at Laughing Place. This is episode 28 of Who's the Bossk, and it's our very first live episode, which is super exciting. Yeah, and I'm so excited to be part of Forcefest, which is put on by our friends at Skywalking Through Neverland. They did an amazing job. Let's pay them credit, and also, if you have any money to spare, please make a donation to Make-A-Wish, which is the charity of choice of Forcefest. And I think you can do that by going up and buying some V coins up in the top right corner there. And then if you click on the V with the diamond in the chat there, you can give some money to Make-A-Wish for a very good cause, helping kids get their wishes granted. I think that's amazing. So with that said, I want to welcome our guests for this week for the first ever live episode of Who's the Bossk. And his name is D. Tails. D, thank you so much for joining me today.
Not a problem. You know, Richard and Sarah reached out to me, and of course, anything for those guys. I absolutely love those guys. Absolutely amazing. And I got to see them and spend some time with them when I was in LA. And Richard took me to Disneyland. Oh my goodness, we had the best time, and just amazing.
So was that after Star Wars Galaxy's Edge had opened? Did you get to go there?
No, that was before Galaxy's Edge. So I haven't even seen that. I haven't even experienced that.
Oh, no.
But I got to see the signposts and the billboards that were hiding it all. You know?
Well, as soon as you get the chance, I highly recommend making your way back here to Disneyland once the park has reopened, of course. It's not open right now, but you could go to Walt Disney World in Florida, I guess. But when everything gets back to normal. Yeah. You got to check out.
I need my crew and my family there. I need Richard and Sarah there. That's what I need.
Well, hopefully, if you ever make it there, I'll come and join you. We'll have a drink at the Oga's Cantina together. So, Dee, we're going to talk all about your career in Star Wars. But first, we're going to start with something called the 5 Star Wars questions. This is something we do on Who's the Bossk with our guests. And this kind of gives us a groundwork, a base level for your Star Wars experience kind of throughout your life. And the first of these 5 Star Wars questions is, what is your first Star Wars memory?
My first Star Wars memory, it had to be on a weekend. And I was watching Sesame Street. That was my jam as a kid. And then straight away after Sesame Street, there was this behind the scenes documentary. And it started off with Star Wars. And I didn't know what Star Wars was at the time. You know, I'd seen things that had flashed by with like very faint trailers or something, just one specific random trailer or something. I knew about bits of it from school because at school we were collecting cards. Hadn't seen the movie, but we're collecting cards because that's the thing, right? And so I'm seeing a gold droid. I'm seeing a little blue and white one. I'm seeing these guys in a cockpit with this old man stood behind them, and it looked really cramped, and it's in space, right? But then I'm seeing this behind the scenes documentary, which is explaining to some degree what that's all about. And in this behind the scenes thing, I'm seeing guys in a corridor shooting lasers out of a gun, and this laser just traveling across the screen to hit somebody. And I'm like, whoa, you know? And during that period, it couldn't have been that much of a gap. But as a kid, you blur these timelines. So I ended up seeing the making of Star Wars, the making of Empire Strikes Back. And Empire Strikes Back is the one that nailed it for me. Like I said, I was watching Sesame Street. I knew the Muppets, man. They were my pals. And, you know, Super Grover, I love all that. So I then spot Miss Piggy on the set. I'm like, what's Miss Piggy doing on the set? You know, and then I see Jim Henson. And even as a kid, I knew who Jim Henson was. Yeah, you had to know, if you loved that, you knew who Jim Henson was. I'm like, hang on, how is he fitting into stuff? What's going on? And then he's got Kermit with him. And then they start explaining how George had gone to Jim to help him create this new character, Yoda. And so that just tied it all in for me. I was like, oh, if Jim's in, I'm in. so that's what kind of was that fishing line that kind of pulled me in to Star Wars. But it was something else, because the world wasn't a backstage area like in the Muppets. It wasn't these set scenarios with Sesame Street. It was like a real planet, and there was like other adults acting with this creature. And he wasn't a velvet creature, colorful creature. He was like some little toady kind of creature, right? but it was the adults that gave Star Wars its validity for me, and pulled me in. And they never broke character in communicating with these creatures. And I was just like, whoa, I can believe in this. I can buy into this. But seeing how it was made or whatever, it was just like, no, just come into my Star Wars world and have a look around. That's what I imagine George was saying to me. so yeah, that's how it started for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I got to interview Frank Oz a couple years ago for the documentary he made. Muppet,
yes, I saw
Muppet
that.
Guys Talk. Oh yeah, great. Yeah, and he was so kind and warm and had so many great stories to tell. And I had to ask him one question about Yoda, even though the interview had nothing to do with Star Wars, but I just had to do it.
What was that?
What's that?
What was the question? Go on. What was you asking?
I wanted to know if there was a difference between the way he performed Yoda when he was actually performing the puppet and the way he performed Yoda when he was just doing the voice, like when they went to all CGI for the character, and he said there really wasn't. It's just a little bit more physical for him when he's controlling the puppet, but very cool to be able to talk to him. So the second of the 5 Star Wars questions is, what is your favorite Star Wars movie and why? And I have a feeling it might be one of the ones that you're in.
That would be a good bet. But my favorite Star Wars movie is A New Hope, is Star Wars. And that's simply because when I start, like I told you, I started with the behind the scenes, and I didn't get to see the movies as a kid because my family weren't big on taking me to the cinema, and it wasn't such a thing. I think the crowds and the kids that I kind of hung out with weren't into cinema either. We were just interested in being outside and playing. And so by the time I got it on VHS and I saw those movies, because that's where I saw them on VHS, even though I was old enough to see them in the cinema. It was this thing where I then delved into listening to the commentaries once they hit DVD, because I was hanging around and I was and then they were showing the making ofs randomly, but there were different kind of making ofs, so I knew they were being tweaked as they went along. But the more I delved into the behind the scenes, the more I started kind of gravitating to George and what it actually took to make that movie. Yes, you can have ideas for the rest, and you can have ideas and say, well, before that and after it's here, but let's just start right here. You can have all of that, but he had no guarantees that he was even going to get that. And Hollywood was shutting the door on him. So this is just blowing my mind that this guy was put in an impossible situation. No one wanted to show his trailers. No one wanted to back the movies, right? No one wanted to back him other than Francis Ford Coppola. And that was just through advice. And that had to be worth a ton, because throughout everything, he was still able to achieve his outline dream and just to getting this thing started, and you look at where he started then, and he always said that he wanted it to be like a TV serial, like Flash Gordon. And lo and behold, I've got goosebumps. I've got goosebumps. Lo and behold, we've got the Mandalorian now. I mean, we'll probably get to that at some point. But I'm like, this is the realization of that. And with the number of movies that have been released in the cinema, cinematically, you're like, well, anytime someone wants to just chop those up and put them out as segments, it's just like, whoa, you could do that. But it has to be Star Wars: A New Hope, because without Star Wars, we wouldn't have this, and a lot of franchises in this whole industry wouldn't have the ability to show what it is they want to show, because ILM wouldn't have created it.
Absolutely.
So Star Wars is where my heart is at.
I definitely understand where you're coming from there. The third of the 5 Star Wars questions: who's your favorite Star Wars character and why?
R2-D2.
Okay.
Look, I'm watching this movie. As a kid, ever since I was a kid, I'm watching this movie and I'm seeing these 2 droids that aren't technically a part of this movie, right? But they're given this commentary, and I'm getting it. I understand the dynamics and things like that, and I know one's a little bit of a worrywart, and the other one is just like, oh, don't worry about it, just come along, And it was just that moment where 3PO says to R2, "Mind your language." That was it. That was it for me. That just threw me. That was just like, so the droid swore. Did he swear? What did he say? What was that? Do you know what I mean? It was one of those things, but it meant that droid wasn't bound by those rules, or certain rules that were not just intrinsic to cinema and how you tell a story and certain characters, but he was almost outside of that, because you're watching a children's movie and he said something bad, but I want to know what it was. But nobody knows what it was, right? But just that attitude, and just it's R2 has it for me, and he's just a little. Look, I love him, but he's just a little tin can. But it's just beautiful, and how he's regarded and how he is necessary in certain places. I don't know if the theory still tracks that he's the one telling these entire stories. I don't know if it still tracks, but that was important when I was younger, because it made sense for me to kind of think, well, maybe he's telling it from his point of view, But yeah, R2-D2, love R2.
Yeah, I think that kind of fell away a little bit with the sequel trilogy, because R2 is like hibernating before he gets the map and stuff.
Yeah.
But certainly for the first 6 movies, we are seeing it kind of through the droid's eyes. But yeah, that was one of the original ideas. So the fourth of the 5 Star Wars questions: if you could live in the Star Wars universe, which you kind of have, which faction would you belong to? Would you be a Jedi? Would you be a Sith? Would you be in the Rebel Alliance, the Empire, the Resistance, the First Order? Would you be a smuggler, a bounty hunter? Where would you fit in, you personally, in that universe?
All right, let's start this way. All right, I'm going to ask you a question. Okay. When you were a kid, which character did you most want to be in Star Wars?
I think I wanted to be Han Solo. I think I was probably more like Luke, but I wanted to be Han.
yeah, that's the general gist, right?
Right.
I didn't want to be any of them, because I thought, well, they already exist. It's a really weird place to kind of perceive yourself to be, when everyone around you is pretending to be this character or that character, and I couldn't, because they were already there. And maybe I imbued them with more sense of a reality than was necessary. But I kind of thought, well, maybe I could be like one of their, maybe a rebel that helps them, or they need, or something, But as time's gone on, I think I would. Yeah, I'm quite certain I'll probably be a gray Jedi. More of a nomad. And I'd kind of been thinking about that and what that meant a good few years ago, when I started hearing the term being thrown around.
Okay.
And then I watched the Clone Wars and witnessed Ahsoka's story. It's one of the, if it's not the best storyline, separate from the original movies, it's right up there. Her story is absolutely epic in the Clone Wars. I
Yeah.
don't know who's tuned in, but if you haven't seen the Clone Wars, it's worth investing in. It's a cartoon, yes, but you got to. It's still canon, and some
Yeah.
of our main characters do appear, and it's where you get to see the Pikes for the first time, other than in Solo, yeah. But Ahsoka's story is such an epic, epic story to tell, even in an animated format, because you don't have to build up where she's from, what she's about, what she's been learning, and what the opposite to that is, that she's been fighting against, or she's supposed to be against being a Jedi. But the reality of it is that not everything is black or white, not everything is right or wrong, and she finds a great deal of conflict in how one side is ultimately just, well, this is the way, and the other side is, this is the way, and there is no room for any of emotional gravitas from any kind of situation from an individual. So her heart breaks. You see her heart shatter into a million pieces. Well, you don't see it, but you feel it, right? And that for me is such a it's such an interesting place to kind of start with. And even when I'm thinking about, yeah, I'd be a great Jedi, but my story would be pretty much like how Bruce Lee envisaged Kung Fu. Yeah, I'm just wandering through, and I encounter this and I encounter that, and sometimes I help, and sometimes I just walk away. But there has to be this reality within the Force, and I think she brings that out. And I can't believe I can say this, she's going to appear in The Mandalorian. I can't believe that. It's and it means that there's hope that we might even get that story. But yeah, that's one of the biggest, most beautiful things I've ever witnessed in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, certainly. The rumor is that Ahsoka will be in Mandalorian season 2. It hasn't been officially announced, but it kind of leaked out through the trade publications. But Dave in the chat is asking who Dee played in the movies, and we are going to get into that in depth in just a few minutes. But there's just one question left in the 5 Star Wars questions, and this one I give my guests an option. It's called impression or possession. You can do a Star Wars impression of your choice, or you can tell me about a favorite Star Wars possession. So, Dee, what do you got?
An impression, or a thing. I don't know if I can live, man. I can do it on my own or things like that. But hang on.
Okay.
Don't laugh. You can't laugh.
I won't look. I'm not looking.
Okay. Okay. All right. I can't do it with the headphones. I'm trying to. That's R2. That's the best I can do. But I've also got this. This is my prized possession.
You have an action figure of a character that you played in a Star Wars movie.
Oh yeah.
That's pretty cool.
This was presented to me by Martin Keeler from Fantha Tracks. It's an action figure. I action figures not around per se, but I've got certain figures and things like that. But just as a kid, I played with these, before, during, and after being aware of Star Wars. Do you know what I mean? So, and I love it because he's pretty rare. Apparently, he's pretty rare. He's pretty hard to get hold of.
Yeah, I don't have that one.
Hey, see, I like a lot.
Now I know he also came with one of the Lego sets. There was a Millennium Falcon Lego set. Yeah, no, I don't have that one either because that was one of the bigger sets from Solo, a Star Wars story. But I don't
Mind
have.
Healer. He sorted me out with one of those too. That one sits in like in my. I've got like a Solo crew jacket, and it has a little pocket on the side, and he sits in there permanently.
That's
You know,
awesome.
he goes everywhere with me in that jacket. But that is it's just yeah.
And
I
for
haven't
the
got the word
record,
for that.
that's great. And for the record, I thought your R2D2 impression was excellent. So I could immediately identify who you were trying to do. So
You're
all right,
too kind.
let's start with talking about the career of Details. Now, before we get into your Star Wars roles, let's just briefly talk about how you got started in the entertainment industry.
Oh wow. I'll try and give you a speed run. But the first play I ever did was when I was age 10, and it was Aladdin, and I got to play the genie of the lamp. And I remember the whole year of auditioning to play this role, and I didn't know how I was going to compete with the whole year. But I did watch a lot of television. I did watch the Carry On shows. I did watch oh what was that? What was that show called? Are You Being Served? And it had this, and it was being the whole shop floor was like a fashion boutique or something like that, and they sold clothing and fitted people clothes. And the guy who was running it was very, very camp. And so I decided, my opening line was going to be, "I'm the genie of the lamp." And the whole year just fell apart, and that was my role. That was my very first role. What was interesting about that is that it told me and it showed me that I had the ability to remember dialogue. And however frightening that was before I got onto the stage, it was still there. So that kind of set the ball rolling, and then head on a few years, and I'm realizing, well, you know what? I need an equity card. It's like an actor's card. You can't get castings, and you can't be seen, or you can't do anything in the industry without this actor's card. And so at the time, you couldn't get one of those without contracts. And then you couldn't get contracts unless you had one of those. And so it was going to be one of these things where someone was going to have to give you a break, or you were going to have to find a back door somewhere. And my back door was dancing. So I ended up dancing for some singers and some rappers and things like that. And one artist was the biggest artist I'd done when I was at that young age was Gwen Guthrie. Gwen Guthrie sang, "Ain't nothing going on but the rent. Got to have a J-O-B." Right, that's an old 80s song, right? So I got to dance with her, which was a big deal. And then things progressed, and I got to audition for MC Hammer's Too Legit to Quit World Tour, which was going to hit Europe, and then he lost all of that. That just fell apart. Then I met the MPG at the end of the year. Didn't meet Prince, but I met the MPG, so I was hoping to see them the following year again. And then during that period of time, I had met a singer called G-Man. He was a solo singer, and he said, "Hey, you can dance for me. Come dance with me." So I was like, "Okay." So I'm dancing for G-Man. Then he turns to me and said, "Hey, can you rap?" I says, "I don't know. I haven't tried. I can give it a go." Right? Then that's when I shut off. I shut off and had my audition for him. I came back, and he said, "Oh, I've brought somebody else." And then he brought in this other guy with him, and he said, "Oh, this is KG." And it's like, okay, we're starting a band, and it kind of grew. And then before you know it, with 4 members, with the other member being Cool T, yeah.
And that's
And
Emanate?
so, and now, no, at the time it was the Juice,
Okay.
the Juice, because we had the Juice, right? And then a production company were interested and wanted to develop us, and that's when we became Emanate. And we, oh my goodness, yeah. We're going back 1995. And for a British band to to perform the way you would have seen New Edition or Guy or I don't know, any of the bands from that era. It was unheard of for the UK to have that. They had their kind of their boy bands that were very kind of doo-woppy or very kind of, you know, they had their thing, but they didn't have anything R&B related. And so we came out and we set the trend. We got on the Bad Boys the movie soundtrack, which was a big deal for a British act. We toured with Janet Jackson. This all just kind of unraveled, and I'm still thinking, well, one day I'll get to acting, but this is pretty fun right now, you know. So we're doing this. We're touring with Janet Jackson. We're having Jodeci remix one of our singles. We're having one of the producers from Montel Jordan remix our ballads. All just impossible things were happening for us during that period of time, and then that came to a head. We kind of finished. We kind of ended with that, and it was an amazing ride. I felt like I had this summer family. Like, you know, when things just happen, you know, like the Goonies, you know, or yeah. Stand By Me, you know, and you just have this adventure and it's the movie and then that's it. It was one of those. I was surrounded by the most talented, gifted individuals I've ever met in my entire life, and we were all able to contribute to create this band. And then after that, it was like, right, now I need to get myself an agent. You know, now she'll know who I am because I was in the band. So and that kind of, and it helped. And I just kind of had to go through the process of doing loads of auditions, which was refreshing me and getting me back into that acting world, you know. And one of the first things that opportunities that came along was being able to perform on stage, you know, and I got to work on a couple of Shakespeare pieces, and I'd never really understood Shakespeare until I saw Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. You know, if people are out there and you're thinking Shakespeare, you're right. Give Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet a watch. You'll be surprised at how much of it you can understand. Yeah, given that they're talking in old speak, right? But that has a lot, and that movie has a lot of style and class to it. So the Scottish play, which was Macbeth, and so I got to play a few small roles in there, and a Thane and an apparition, and one of the murderers got merged into. Well, three of the murderers got merged into one character that I got to play. And then the director enjoyed putting that production together so much that he did the second one. And the second one was Romeo and Juliet. And I got to play Paris, you know. And spoiler alert, you know, if you only know the movie, I didn't know Paris died. Right? So I got a beautiful sword fight. I had a beautiful sword fight with the leading actor, Theo Gill. I love him, Theo Gill. And yeah, where he ran me through with the sword, and that was kind of like my introduction into that world, coming from my slight distraction from doing music, you know. And so after that, I ended up doing pantos, you know, these Christmas shows. I don't know if you know about them in America, but every year, I'm not sure about this year, but every year at Christmas, there are these children's shows that are put on that are based around fairy tales. So there would be Aladdin. So I got to reprise my genie role as Aladdin. But this time he was a cool American, kind of sassy kind of guy, you know. And while that's all going on, you have silly humor being played out. And there's humor for the adults, and then there's humor for the children in the same show. And there were beautiful things to be put together, and they would last for maybe 2 months going into January. So over that whole Christmas period, the whole family could come and see the show. And for 2 years, I played the genie, and then for the other 5 years, I played Tommy the cat. To Dick Whittington. Now, Dick Whittington's an old story in London. So he comes from the country and he goes to London to find his fame and fortune. And lo and behold, there are rats there, and there's an evil rat king, and and so on and so forth. And good job he's got his trusty Tommy the cat, right? And so I got to do that, but that was exhausting. That was arriving at the theater an hour before everybody else, painting my face, getting into my suit, doing 2 shows a day, not getting chained, not wiping that stuff off my face throughout the lunch break. So someone would have to run out and go and get some food for the cat, and then it'd be back on stage, and then I'd be the last one out again, having to take the stuff off. So that's like 2 months' work. And so I was enjoying that. And even though things were getting tough on some of those shows, I'd be thinking, well, what if George Lucas is out there watching? What if Spielberg's? and of course they're not, but you have to say these things to get you through it, right? And sometimes, like when the tannoy would come on and I would hear the audience and I'd hear the place just filled with kids, that's all I would need to charge me up. And then after that, then I got called in for Batman Begins, strangely enough. And it was Chris Nolan, and he was hiring at least 20 actors, I think, to come in and be, what was it called? Character support. Now, I heard of extras, but I hadn't heard of character support. And what he wanted is he wanted the extras, then he wanted character support, then he wanted the main cast. So that the character support could be in between the extras and the main cast, but then also if he needed to give dialogue out on the day, he knew he was giving it to an actor or an actress. You know, I didn't get any dialogue, but one of the guys, myself and a guy called Andrew were hanging out with, was a guy called Dominic. And in Batman Begins, there's a guy who yells up at Katie Holmes, and he asks if she's all right when she's at the train station. He's the guy who got the lines, right? So we were celebrating for him on that day, you know. And I know he's appeared in a few different things here and there, and my heart always goes out to him whenever I spot him. But that was the first, and then there was Captain Phillips. But by the time I got to Captain Phillips, I was like, yeah, I need some dialogue. I need to be doing stuff. I can't be just in case, you know. I can't be that safety net. And so after Captain Phillips, I kind of decided, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. I kind of done, and I can't top Batman. Batman Begins, bringing that character back. After I'd wanted to be in Tim Burton's version, you know, and I couldn't be. I was too young, but I wanted to be on that set, and that didn't happen. And then 10 years later, I'm on this one as a Gotham City police officer. So my part isn't big, but you might spot me here and there in that movie. And then what happened after that? How
about Jekyll and Hyde?
Oh, look at me right there. Oh, don't I look pretty? Okay, right. Getting straight to Jekyll and Hyde by Charlie Higson. Yes, incredible. Now, funny enough, I auditioned for that directly after rapping on The Force Awakens. Right, so we had just finished filming Force Awakens, and a casting for this comes through, and they were asking for a creature performer specialist, and I was quite new, so I just thought I'd audition for it. Lots of people like that. I know they've been scouring. They were scouring quite far and wide for the performer for that. And I absolutely loved playing that character. He's called the Harbinger. And if you don't know Jekyll and Hyde, it's the mini-series. Only did 1 season, unfortunately. I know they kind of shaped a 2nd season, but it hasn't happened yet. May happen, I don't know. But the Harbinger in this mini-series, he's kind of like this soothsayer. He knows what's coming. He knows something bad's coming, and he's being kept by a specific agency, you know, who are kind of just pumping him for information so they know what's coming and how to deal with that. And the style of it is very steampunk. So if you're into your steampunk kind of style and imagery, that's where we're going with this story. It's a very old story. Imagine the black and white movies. Imagine those black and white movies were in color. Now imagine them with steampunk style to it. That's what that TV show was. It was absolutely incredible. The company that did the special effects was a company called DNEG, and a guy called Hayden was looking after me and was letting me know exactly what they were going to be doing and showing me as much as they could, so that I knew exactly what my posture was going to be to get that head performance, because the rest of it was going to be CG. So yeah, that was, yeah, I loved it. A lot of fun. But my first TV experience, my first TV series experience, and it had to be on something as cool as that. I loved it.
That's awesome. All right, I think we got to get into Star Wars here because we got 25
All right,
minutes
cool.
left. So let's start with The Force Awakens. How, I got the poster here behind me, right? Tell me about how you got involved and what that experience was like from the get-go.
Well, funny, just before that, you showed a clip of Our Take, which is this romantic comedy that I did. And that was directly before this movie. So while I was doing Our Take, I had no idea of the future. I noticed Michael Bay was looking at some of my profiles or something like that, or someone from his company. So that was as big as an interest that I was getting. And then after we shot this short little movie, it's not a short movie, it's a low budget micro movie, but it's a romantic comedy. It's awesome. If you haven't seen it, find it on Amazon Prime. But after we did that, I suddenly get a call from a friend of mine saying, you might need to take a trip to Pinewood Studios. Neil Scanlon wants to see you. So I'm like, okay, right. And it's like an actor, saying, oh, well, someone at Paramount wants to see you about something, and you're like, right, you haven't been. I've had no reason to be anywhere near Pinewood my entire career, right? But someone now wants to see me, so I'm like, okay. So I go down there, and I had a hint that it might have been Star Wars related. So I'm thinking, well, okay, I might have to audition for something. And I know there are auditions going on, but let me see. Went there, straight into a fitting. I'm like, okay, so does this mean I've got the part? I'm thinking in my head, does this mean I've got this part? Hang on, what is this part? Yeah, right? Because at the moment you're fitting me with a skull cap. That's the only thing I'm seeing. And then later I'm teamed up with Tom Bell, and he's in the same situation as me. And so we think we're going to be performing these husk wolves that appear in Maz's castle, right? Who's performed by Nathan Plant and Paul Warren. But then all of a sudden, no, we don't want you for those. We want you for these other two characters. How do you feel about walking on your knees? I'm like, for Star Wars? Yeah, hey, I'll do it all day, right? And so as the fittings went on, I ended up with that beautiful head right there. I have to look the right way. I'm ended up with that beautiful head right there, and Tom ends up with the other one, which is kind of full on, and kind of thoughtful or whatever. There we are. And what we're given is one sets off the other, right? So yes, Prashi, who Tom plays, sets off Kratinus, and Kratinus is always the one laughing and giggling about something. But during that shoot, during that scene, we realized that when we tilted our head, it changed the emotion and facial expressions on the characters, even though they were fixed, right? And so we had a lot of fun playing around with those faces and entertaining JJ and production and the set in between and stuff like that, because yeah, Kratinus is just too infectious. You can't not laugh when he's laughing. It's right. Just awesome.
That's great. Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, and then we get to the following year. You're in Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, as the droid KOHN.
Con, yeah. Oh, they are, what a suit. They went on to make up maybe one or two other suits very similar to that, especially for Solo, and they resprayed it, so it's still about. That's the very first suit they ever made for those tactical droids. but yes, I was being fitted at the time because this character was originally going to be K2SO's character in the movie. And so I was being fitted for it. It fit me like a glove. I could see, oh my goodness, I could see out of that suit. You know, I could breathe, you know, behind the grills on those eyes. Yeah, I've got the lights there, but everywhere else I can see. And under that chin, that whole big piece there that comes under the eyes, that slots out through magnets, right? And then underneath it, they put holes so I could breathe. And it was the most beautiful costume to put on. And yeah, as time went on, they kind of developed beyond that image and went for that classic design. That's kind of like a cross between, you know, one of those prequel massive droids, you know, and something else. And yeah, I turned up on set and they said, "Oh, your character's kind of changed." I'm like, "Yeah, but you still need me, right?" You know, they said, "Yeah." So they had me on set, and then my scene is in Jeddah, and you see it for 2 seconds, right? But the way Gareth was filming that movie, it was well known that guerrilla filming, so you didn't know what was being filmed, so you had to just keep busy 24/7 because you didn't know when they were going to get to you, or when the camera was pointing at you. And on one of the breaks, I tell this, I don't know how many people know this story already, but on the breaks, the children were all gathered round, and I was talking to the children that are in Jeddah, and they were amazing. They stayed in character just to chat to me and stuff like that. And when one of them drifted out of character, the other one nodded and said, "Hey, stay in character." So I was being entertained, yeah, and my heart was breaking at the same time because it was so adorable. And then yes, and then we had several breaks, and then on one of those breaks, their carer came back with them, and I was still in Jeddah and dottering about, and they said, "Oh, go and see your friend the droid." And then they all came running over, and then I stood there just like, oh my goodness, like that, and that's what ended up in the movie, you know. And of all the clips or all of the split second you were going to show in that movie of me at all, you decide to show that one. That's, you know, it has my heart because it was such a sincere moment,
Right.
you know, coming from the kids and my reaction, because I had no idea I was being filmed. But yes, that's Khan. That's an L1 droid. Beautiful costume, absolutely beautiful.
That's great. So at this point, you're developing this relationship with Lucasfilm, where obviously they've come to trust you. They keep inviting you back for more. So are you starting to expect, like, okay, I know there's another Star Wars movie coming out. Are they going to give me another call?
No. Because it wasn't, because my thoughts weren't necessarily with Lucasfilm, because Lucasfilm were trusting somebody else to make those decisions, and that somebody else was Neil Scanlon from the CFX department. And from what myself and Tom were doing in Maz's castle, you know, impressed him enough to know that we knew.
There we go. I wanted to bring up the picture of you with Neil there.
Yeah. And that was on the set on one of those days that I wasn't needed. But he got to see me in that suit, and every character I got to play was chosen for me by Neil, as almost as if he knew, like, oh, that's no problem, Dee can do that, you know. And in some of those costumes, you know, I couldn't tell you whether I could do that or not. You know, you'd have to put me in that situation. But I don't know. I think there's something to be said for being a performer and loving this franchise and loving the style and the content of this franchise. You know, you could put me in any suit you wanted. If it's in Star Wars, I know exactly what I'm doing. Yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing. You know, you say, oh, but okay, can you walk over here? And I can do all of that. Yeah. But when it comes to business, we all have to, and this is all throughout the CFX department, we all have to have this innate pre-knowledge of how we move what we're doing and what we're like, what our personalities are like if they shine through. And some are playing it just like a human being, which is really interesting when you see someone with a face on and whatever, and they're just like in Solo, you know, Derek Arnold's behind the bar just cleaning glasses. You know, it's just like, what? You know, yeah, Neil trusting me, trusting that I could not only deliver this droid, but put me in the fray for this leading droid, you know, that got performed by Alan Tudyk in the end, but brilliantly performed, brilliantly. I couldn't, I laughed and enjoyed that performance so much. But to be a part of that process and knowing that that's how Lucasfilm do things, and you know, everything's part of a process, and anything that they shoot, you know, could end up in that movie. You just don't know, so you just got to be working and on form 24/7. I couldn't take it for granted because I hadn't expected that role. You know,
Right.
Even though it got whittled down, I couldn't expect that from Neil.
Yeah.
You know, and I would always, when the next movie was coming along, it was always like, well, you know, I've just got to sit there and see. And if that phone rings, it rings. If it doesn't, then, oh, you know, you gotta, oh. So, but luckily, yeah, it rang. It rang a couple more times after that.
All right, so that brings us to Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and your character's name is Slow and Low, and he's the Abednego. Is that how you say the alien name? Am I close?
Oh my goodness, you got me confused now. Abednego,
Okay,
or something like that.
but he's the guy who's reporting Finn and Rose Tico for having parked inappropriately on Canto Bight Casino. Let's hear about that. Now, this character was voiced by Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the movie, but you were actually there in the costume. So, tell me a little bit about that experience.
Oh, I love that character. He didn't start off like that. He was originally just going to be a beachcomber, you know, for one of those classic moments where, you know, there's not the guy, as you do, kind of like metal detecting on a beach. He looks up and he sees a ship fly over, and it's just one of those sequences of Star Wars. That's how it was going to be. So I was just thinking, oh, okay, cool. Then I turned up on set, and I got put into this beautiful costume by Michael Kaplan, you know, and Neil was on hand. Neil was very much on hand with that character in terms of making sure that there was a seal at the back that was fixed, and if there was any chance of seeing that was closed, making sure that everything was just working right, and I could see enough to perform. It was awesome having your boss stood right next to you. It's just really awesome because he knew, like, even when you see things being made in the creature shop, you know, he's saying, yeah, but have you tried it like this? And he'll grab the remote control and do something, and everyone was like, oh, you know, there was always something that he could add, and there was an eye that he has for this stuff. And so, yes, the first thing that I'm hearing is that, oh, he's going to be in the casino. So, and he's quite well to do, and he's quite posh. So it's just like, oh, so I'm changing my posture. I'm looking at the clothes I'm wearing. He's wearing sandals, by the way, right? but he, you know, and he's quite posh, and he's walking around, and he's one of those, right? Then I get told, he's not quite like that. He's not quite like that. You have to think maybe he's a bit more laid back, you know. I'm like, okay, I can do that a little bit. So I pull it back a little bit, and he's just curious as he's walking around the casino. And then I speak to Ryan. I said to Ryan, I'm told that he's kind of posh. He's kind of well-to-do, but he's you know, he's a little bit laid back. He says, oh no, the dude's chilled out. Right? And he's like, yeah, think of a surfer dude, you know. I'm like, oh, I can do that. Right? So that's where I found his mannerisms and his movement. Now, through his nostrils is where I'm looking. Yeah, and there's that big gap there. So, you know, if I wanted to look at you, first of all, I have to say, well, okay, there you are. right? Now I have to point my head at you, and now I can talk to you, right? And also I had Ollie Taylor and at times Steve Kinman in my ear operating the facials for this character. And so that was the first time I had an earpiece and was matching how I would perform something with how the operators were going to also perform it. Because like, if I'm saying, like, they give me some random dialogue to say, you know, and if I'm saying in the casino, oh yeah, they're the shuttle parkers, yeah, then my initial movement is, they're the shuttle park, and that's the cue for the guys to go, ah. And then when they're doing it, I hear them saying, "There's a shuttle parker." So I'm mouthing it while they're saying it for my own movement, and so we're getting the gesture right. But here's the thing: in the casino, when he's and rows and points them out, I'm literally being given live direction at that moment by Ryan, yeah. And he says, "Oh, and they just stunned him." And so when I'm gonna, oh, like that, yeah, yeah, instantly. At the same time, I'm seeing Ollie Taylor operating it. Then I'm seeing Steve Kinman operating the eyes on the remote control, and he goes, "Oh!" And so we both did that at the same time and caught that. So as far as I'm aware, that was one take or maybe two takes, but that blew my mind because I'm hearing the whizzing and I'm just giving the movement, and the synchronistic relationship that you have with your operators, you know, sound like a droid, all right, is absolutely amazing, and it's what they do, and I think that's the magic of Star Wars, whether people glimpse it or in one take, or maybe it takes a few takes to see it. But yeah, and another thing I love about that character is a lot of people still don't know that I'm in it and still say it's Joseph. So I'm happy. I'm just like, yeah. You'll find out.
That's awesome. Okay, we are swiftly running out of time here, so I want to get to the role that I believe this is the most screen time that you have in a single role in Star Wars. Now, how do you pronounce this character's name? I'm not going to say it right.
Quay Tulsite.
Okay, and this is in Solo, a Star Wars story. He's a Pike, and he's on the planet Kessel in the spice mines of Kessel. Let me hear about this guy. D.
Oh my goodness! Neil. I love Neil to bits because he always does this. Whenever I think I've finished, I'm wrapped on the movie. He say, "Oh no, we've got one more for you." So I'm just thinking, oh, it's just this other guy or whatever. And they say, "Oh yeah." So I'm thinking, oh, okay, so doddering about it. No. He operates computer room. So a string of events all starts to lead in to me realizing that actually I'm operating this facility. All right. Okay. Cool. What type of creature is he, or whatever? And I speak to Justin Pitlecki and Jake Lunt Davies, and they said, "Oh no, he's a Pike." And I'm like, I know the Pikes. I know Clone Wars, right? And then they explain that he's been disfigured, almost like the Saw Gerrera, almost like Vader, in what's actually happened to him that's transformed him into this and reduced him to this. And oh wow, again, I could see, I could breathe, but I also had an idea on how he was going to move. Like, it's interesting. Look at that. Look at the costume. The way I'm holding the hands is how I perceived a Pike would be holding their arms. Yeah, and it's convenient that he's holding keys and things like that. And that smoking pipe thing that he has. It's just these little bits I could throw in that was very, very Pike-esque. Moments when he's talking to Kira in the computer room, and he turns to her, and it's the way he turns. But yeah, I love that guy. I mean, he's bad. He's a bad dude, right? But one of my favorite things in that is that there's a moment where he closes the door, and they're telling me, all I'm being told is, you're going to put your key in, and and the door's going to close. I know Star Wars. I know how the doors close. Now, I know that, right? So I'm like, okay, so they're filming the key and I turn it, right? And they say, okay, you're going to turn it and then we're going to close the door. And then as I turned it and they started closing the door, I looked at the camera with those big yellow eyes and the door closed it off. And I'm like, they kept it. They kept it. Now that's Star Wars, right? So, but yes, the Pikes and that role, I think, yeah, is my crowning jewel for that journey that I've made from within creatures. But yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
That's awesome. And you got that action figure and you got a Lego minifigure, and that's pretty sweet. So,
yeah!
and there's a picture of you holding the Lego minifigure right there. Look at
Yes,
that.
yes.
Okay, so if you can do it in 3 minutes or less, I want to know from your perspective, what is the difference of your approach as performing a creature character where you're behind an entire costume, you can't see your face, and performing where people can actually see you, see your
Okay.
facial expressions. What's the difference between how you approach those two things?
Right. So I can't speak in terms of puppeteering because I'm a guest in their industry. I'm a guest, just being told what to do. And like I said, I love Sesame Street, so I kind of know. Just give me a bit more direction. But from being in a suit and acting, being in a suit is more like character work. You know, when you're doing character work, there are a lot of personal quirks, a lot of realisms in the movement and the motion and the reasons behind maybe a tick or the way they say certain things. And you can really emphasize that within a costume because the face and the costume do 50% of it. The rest is you just making it seamless, you know, and bring to life what somebody's just created because they don't know they don't like the guys and girls that make these things have no idea what they're going to what they're going to look like. They have they have their fingers crossed when they're hearing somebody's going to be performing it, whatever, so they can see what it looks like when it's come alive. And in acting, you pull it back because you don't really have the kind of grotesque or pretty faces or creature faces to actually do half the work for you. So a lot of it is pulled back and it's dealt with the eyes and it's dealt with the reactions. But there's a balance. It's interesting because even going from panto and playing Tommy the Cat and things like that, you know, I'm playing to the kids, directly to the kids. You know, I'm acting with the things that it's directly for the kids to view. In Star Wars, it's almost like there's a community. There's like an alien presence, you know, that has its own kind of ebbs and flows and beats to it, you know, and people who are outside of the costumes will give you that validation. So it's kind of like they're two different things, you know. I wouldn't be overacting without that gear on, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, as an actor, it's same processes, same rhyme and reason, just pulling it back in terms of performance.
Fantastic. And I think that's going to bring us to the end of this conversation. We're going to skip a couple segments here because we're running out of time. But I'm sorry, we only had an hour, but I feel like I could talk to you for many hours. So maybe eventually I'll invite you back to be a guest again on the Who's the Bossk podcast, so we can talk at much greater length if you would be up for it.
Absolutely. I have a bit of a reputation. I can talk to Star Wars for days. I can talk for hours, days, whatever.
Me too. So
yeah. Then we need a marathon. That's what we need.
Next time we'll go for 2 hours. This has been Who's the Bossk podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, I have a different guest on every week. We talk about Star Wars headlines. We talk about Star Wars fans. We talk about people who've written Star Wars books. You can check out the show at Who's the Bossk Pod on Twitter. And you can always visit laughingplace.com where I am a regular contributor. I'm the lead Southern California reporter, do a bunch of Star Wars reviews there, books and novels and stuff. And please check that out for all your Disney news and opinions, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Thank you again, Dee. This was awesome. It was a tremendous amount of fun. And please donate to Make-A-Wish. Make-A-Wish. The links are over here in the chat on the left-hand side of the screen. And it's a very worthy cause. And thank you again to Rich and Sarah and the Skywalking Through Neverland team and everybody who put together this event. This has been awesome. And that's going to wrap it up for Who's the Bossk. Have a great one. May the Forcefest be with you.
May the force be with you.